So I am here with a very special session sidebar, and I am joined by Susan Nolan, who is currently the president-elect of STP, the Society for Teaching of Psychology. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you and be able to talk to you today. And we don't do sidebars very often. They're actually the rarest form. Psych sessions in 4 years. I think this is the 11th or 12th.
Wow, I'm honored.
Well, we're honored to
Actually,
have.
STP is honored because this is a nice help for the organization and what we're doing next year.
Well, and the idea is that as we're going into the beginning of your presidential year, it gives you a chance to broadcast literally your presidential initiatives, which is a long-standing tradition for STP presidents to have anywhere from 1 to 12 different initiatives or task forces that are on topics near and dear to their heart. And if you would, I would just love for you to take a few minutes and describe your task forces that start January 1st, 2021, or maybe you've started them now. And then at some point, if you'll describe for our listeners how they can get involved, if there's a process where they can sign up or email you or what that's like, please.
Great. So I understood that the modal number of task forces was 3. And as a good statistician, I decided to go for the mode. So I have 3 task forces, one of which is related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. Amy Feinberg, who is our current president, one of her task forces relates to this as well. So in some ways, this is a continuation of her work, although there are aspects of it that are a bit different. One of which is to look at the structure of our organization. And for those of you who don't know how STP is structured, we have 5 vice presidents in different areas: awards, resources, membership, et cetera. And one of them is diversity and international relations. And that group, there's a diversity committee, international relations committee, and they do wonderful work. Everyone in that area is fantastic, hardworking, lots of great stuff gets done. But sometimes it seems that these different groups are siloed. And so I don't always think that diversity and international relations are as integrated across the organization as they could be and should be. So that task force is going to be looking at that structure and offering some recommendations. The second task force is on what I'm calling pivot teaching, a term that's getting thrown around. It's jargon, which is not always my favorite thing, but it captures the idea well. And it's a combination of what we've had to do during the pandemic, where we've got to switch from one modality to another. This could happen again for various reasons. It could happen for something global, like now. It could happen because of something in our own lives. But there's also this element of pivoting for our students individually. So even in a normal semester with no pandemic, we have students who have things occur in their lives. And how can we pivot for that student and be flexible in ways that uphold our course's learning objective, allow them to succeed? What are things we can do to be student while staying to the rigors and expectations of the course? So it's pivot in all those ways. And so it's the task offer, develop resources, gather resources, et cetera. There's a lot that they could do, and it's really up to them. And then the third and final task force is on statistical literacy, reasoning, and thinking guidelines. I actually chaired a presidential task force a while back in 2014. And since then, the way in which we think about and teach statistics has changed quite a bit with open science. Transparency, the Ruffin crisis, new statistics, Bayesian, et cetera. A lot of that isn't going to be taught. Bayesian probably not yet really at the undergrad level. But what do we want our undergrad majors to know? And separately, although related, what do we want our intro to psych students to know? They're not going to be conducting analyses to know some of this. So the new task force will have 2 groups, one looking at the major, they'll work together, of course, and one looking at class.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that. And secondly, what I love about all of that is that they're so practical. They're practical, and I can see already how they're going to yield deliverables that teachers of psychology are going to benefit from right away. I can see a year from now or less than that, reports and products and things coming out of all three of those. The first one that's going to make the organization better, but the second two that are going to tell us how to be better teachers of psychology.
I hope so. In fact, I'm really eager to hear what the latter two groups tell me to bring right to my classroom. So perhaps there's a selfish element.
Well, okay. So first off, it's very sweet of you to think of it that way. But if you're thinking about being selfish for you, becoming a better teacher, you can probably multiply that by 30,000 teachers of psychology in colleges and universities around the United States. It's you thought of it for you, but guess what? You were also thinking about it for me too, because I want that same improvement for myself. So it really wasn't selfish. A pivot aspect is really cool because, you're right. We use that pivot in kind of a cliche anymore, but the individualized pivot is pretty intriguing. We don't often think about how can we accommodate a student's individual life situation to make sure that there's still rigor. And in fact, to be honest, when students come to us with accommodations through at the university, or even something happens tragically during a semester, not always, but oftentimes faculty members see that as more work for them, or they see that as something that, is going to add something. Oh, I've got to arrange for double time, or I've got to arrange for an extra book because of a visual impairment or a hearing impairment. We don't see that as a beneficial challenge to us to pivot on behalf of our students. So,
I'm sorry. First time this semester, I did a little bit of it on the fly in the spring, but this semester I built a ton of flexibility into my classes in terms of choice for students. And I made sure that no matter what groupings of whatever people chose to do, it would still meet the learning objectives. And that doing that in advance has helped a lot with students who come to me. And it's like, you can skip this week and that is fine because you can choose X, Y, and Z. And that's helped a lot.
Yeah. And I think if your task force can come up with ideas on how to help instructors realize that flexibility doesn't mean lowering your standards, and flexibility doesn't mean less rigor.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a real gift to the discipline.
I was also inspired by so much of what I've seen coming out of STP, including the Facebook group. We've got a wealth of talent within the organization, and to just some of that in these task forces, I think is going to be really amazing to see.
Yeah, and the Facebook group, is impressive. I haven't been on Facebook very much in 2020, but
Lucky
I popped
you.
on. What's that?
I said, lucky you.
Well,
you're smart. You're smart.
By choice. I did pop on this week to post about a Psych Sessions podcast. And I noticed that the Facebook membership was at 15,800 members of that group.
On Facebook, right. They don't all belong officially to us, but is that we can reel them in.
Exactly. And obviously your third task force is clearly near and dear to your heart with your textbook background, as well as your teaching background.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Susan, is there still a chance to get involved?
Yes.
Our task force is set. How does that process work?
I actually decided to do it rather informally, rather than making decisions sort of kind of first come, first serve, but broadcasting it so it wouldn't be, I'm not reaching out to the people that I know. I'm, who wants to be involved through the Facebook group. And what's amazing is we have had a bunch of volunteers already, some of whom I knew personally, or have been involved with STP, but many of whom are completely new to involvement in STP, which has been just great. I think you might remember this. I met you a number of years back, actually at a conference with Regan Garong, and I said, I can't figure out how to get involved in STP. And shortly thereafter, you all got me invited to join a task force, a presidential task force. And that is when I got involved with STP. So I think a presidential task force is a really great way to learn about the organization and start building your way into it. So if people want to get involved, they can email me. My email is susan.nolan, Nolan, at shu.edu. That's Seton Hall University short, shu.edu. The Statistical Literacy Task Force is full. That's the one that filled the fastest. The teaching and the diversity, equity, inclusion task forces still have some spots on them. Even if someone is interested in the Statistical Literacy Task Force, once they're full, I'm going to keep a list of people who are interested, because these groups might want at times to say, hey, are you all willing to, can we bounce some ideas off of you? So anyone who wants to be involved certainly can either be on the task force if there's still room, or can be sort of advisors, consultants to the task force. I would love to have as many people who want to be involved as possible be involved. I'm also seeing some really nice diversity and who's in all kinds of ways on who's joining these task forces, which has been really, really great to see. So absolutely reach out to me.
So we're recording this in November of 2020, and we will release this later this month. And so if you're listening, Susan said it just now, it'll also be in the liner notes for the release of this. So if you're looking at whatever platform you're looking at and you're listening, if you go back and read the little description that came with it, I will be sure to embed Susan's email address for all eternity in the liner notes of this. And Susan, it's going to be a great year. It's going to be so much fun to watch you serve as president. Let me thank you in advance on behalf of all the STP members and teachers of psychology. Well done on your choices for topics. It's no surprise that you'll be serving STP well.
Thanks, and I'm following in some great footsteps of previous STP presidents, including yours.
Well, I appreciate that very much. That's not where I was fishing, but STP has been a gift to a lot of us for a long time. So
absolutely.
Great.
Some of my best friends.
Again, thank you so much for your time, and good luck with your year.